Imagine it's a blazing hot day deep in the heart of Mexico. Sweat cascades down your face as you navigate through a chaotic marketplace bursting with life. The air is thick with spices, sizzling meat, and the shouts of vendors competing for your attention. Your throat feels like sandpaper, your lips cracked and begging for relief from the merciless sun beating down. Then you spot it, gleaming in a rusted metal cooler filled with melting ice chunks. A bottle of Mexican Coca-Cola, its iconic glass contours catching the sunlight like a beacon of salvation. Your fingers close around its cool, wet surface, droplets of condensation blessing your skin with tiny moments of relief. With a satisfying pop and hiss, the metal cap releases a cloud of sweet-scented mist that promises instant refreshment. That first sip, it's an explosion of pure, crisp sweetness dancing across your tongue, mysteriously different from any other Coke you've tasted before. Smoother, richer, more authentic somehow. But have you ever wondered why this version of Coke inspires such devotion that people literally smuggle it across borders? Or why some Americans willingly pay 3 times the price for this imported version of a drink that's available everywhere? The answer lies in a decades-long battle that's been quietly raging beneath the surface. A war not fought with weapons, but with sweeteners. And the consequences? Far more devastating than you might imagine. It all exploded in the early 1980s when American politics collided head-on with your taste buds. U.S. sugar prices were skyrocketing, thanks to hefty import tariffs, while corn farmers enjoyed massive government subsidies that made high-fructose corn syrup ridiculously cheap. Coca-Cola executives faced a critical decision: maintain traditional sugar and watch profits shrink, or switch to the cheaper alternative. Care to guess which path they chose? Within months, American Coke transformed into something fundamentally different, a product your grandparents wouldn't recognize. The classic flavor profile built on pure cane sugar vanished almost overnight. But just across the border, Mexican bottlers stood their ground. Despite economic pressures, they stubbornly refused to compromise, continuing to use pure cane sugar in every bottle. It was more expensive, yes, but to them, some traditions weren't negotiable. Did they realize this simple decision would eventually create a cult-like following around the world? Probably not. But soon, whispers began spreading among soda connoisseurs. Mexican Coke tastes better, cleaner, just like Coke used to taste. Would you be able to tell the difference in a blind taste test? Many claim they can instantly spot Mexican Coke's distinct flavor profile. But is that real or just the power of suggestion working its magic? Before we answer that question, there's another factor that makes Mexican Coke instantly recognizable anywhere in the world. While American Coke embraced plastic bottles and aluminum cans in the name of efficiency and profit margins, Mexico once again chose tradition. Those iconic glass bottles aren't just aesthetically pleasing, they're scientifically superior for preserving taste. Did you know plastic bottles actually leach microscopic chemicals into your drinks? These compounds subtly alter flavor, creating what experts call plastic migration. Glass, meanwhile, remains completely inert, preserving your Coke exactly as it was intended to taste, with zero interference. But these glass bottles represent something even more profound: cultural resistance. While multinational corporations pushed for standardization and cost-cutting across the globe, Mexico quietly refused to compromise its beverage experience. These weren't just containers, they were silent protests against the homogenization of global culture. Suddenly, collectors and enthusiasts worldwide began seeking these glass-bottled treasures, driving demand to unprecedented heights. But as Mexican Coke's popularity soared internationally, something far more troubling was happening within Mexico itself. Here's a fact that should stop you in your tracks. In the southern Mexican state of Chiapas, people drink more Coca-Cola than water. Not as a figure of speech, literally more Coca-Cola than water. The numbers are staggering. The average person in Chiapas consumes an astonishing 821 liters of Coca-Cola per year. That's 2.2 liters every single day. For perspective, that's about 12 times what the average American drinks. 12 times! Can you even imagine drinking that much soda? Why such extreme consumption? The answer is both simple and horrifying. In many Chiapas communities, Coca-Cola is actually cheaper and more readily available than clean drinking water. Let that sink in for a moment. Soda is easier to get than water. In the indigenous town of San Juan Chamula, newborn babies are given Coca-Cola in their bottles. Children as young as 2 carry personal bottles everywhere they go. Religious ceremonies incorporate the drink as a sacred element, with locals believing the carbonation helps carry prayers to the gods through burping. But the most shocking part? Coca-Cola trucks navigate treacherous mountain roads to reach remote villages where even basic government services don't exist. Villages without consistent electricity or medical care somehow never run out of Coke. How is this possible? The answer takes us straight into the shadowy intersection of corporate power and politics. When Vicente Fox was elected president of Mexico in 2000, he wasn't just any politician. He was a former Coca-Cola executive who had risen to become head of Coca-Cola Latin America. Think about that. A man whose entire career was built on selling sugary drinks became the leader of the country, the world's highest per capita consumption of those very drinks. Coincidence? Let's look at what happened during his presidency. Under Fox's administration, Coca-Cola's distribution networks expanded dramatically, particularly in rural areas. Government water infrastructure projects mysteriously stalled, and most tellingly, attempts to regulate soda consumption through taxes or health warnings were repeatedly blocked or watered down. But the political entanglement goes even deeper. In Chiapas, Coca-Cola secured exclusive water rights to local springs, the very same sources that once supplied villages with drinking water. Now that water is extracted, purified, mixed with sugar and caramel color, and sold back to the same communities at a markup. Does this sound ethical to you? While government officials looked the other way, Coca-Cola effectively monopolized hydration itself. And the consequences? Nothing short of catastrophic. Mexico now faces what doctors call a diabetes apocalypse. The country has the highest diabetes rate in the world, with over 14% of adults suffering from the disease. In Chiapas, these numbers climb even higher. Here's what this means in human terms. Clinics overwhelmed with patients suffering from blindness caused by uncontrolled blood sugar. Hospitals performing amputations at rates that shock international observers. Dialysis centers running 24/7, unable to keep up with kidney failures. Dr. Marcos Arana, a physician in San Cristobal de las Casas, reports seeing children as young as 8 developing type 2 diabetes, a condition once called adult onset because it was unheard of in children. We're watching an entire generation being destroyed by sugar, he says. The economic toll is equally devastating. Mexico spends an estimated 15% of its total health budget treating diabetes complications alone. For a country with significant poverty, these are resources that could be addressing countless other needs. But perhaps most heartbreaking are the individual stories. Like Maria, a 32-year-old mother of 3 who lost both feet to diabetes complications. I knew Coca-Cola wasn't healthy, she admits from her hospital bed, but everyone drinks it. It's just what we do. And yet, while Mexico grapples with this public health nightmare, the world's obsession with Mexican Coke continues to grow, particularly among health-conscious consumers in wealthy countries. Ironic, isn't it? By the mid-2010s, demand for Mexican Coke in the United States had exploded beyond all expectations. Hipster cafés in Brooklyn charged $4 for a bottle. Specialty grocery stores created dedicated Mexican Coke sections. And an underground economy emerged, with entrepreneurs smuggling truckloads across the border to avoid import taxes. But here's the kicker. When researchers conducted extensive blind taste tests at major universities, most participants couldn't reliably distinguish between American and Mexican Coke. In fact, in a Stanford study, only 31% of self-proclaimed Mexican Coke aficionados correctly identified it when labels were removed. So what's really driving this phenomenon? Is it the power of marketing? The allure of perceived authenticity? Or perhaps the glass bottle itself creating a multi-sensory experience that transcends taste alone? Whatever the reason, consumers continue paying premium prices, sometimes 300% markups, for what they believe is superior. Meanwhile, Coca-Cola profits from both versions, essentially selling the same product at different price points to different market segments. Brilliant business strategy or cynical exploitation? You decide. But as demand for authentic Mexican Coke grows worldwide, pressures mount to modify the very thing that made it special in the first place. In late 2023, rumors sent shockwaves through the Mexican Coke fan community. Whispers that Coca-Cola was planning to replace cane sugar with corn syrup in Mexican factories too. The backlash was immediate and fierce. Social media campaigns erupted. Petitions gathered hundreds of thousands of signatures. Save Mexican Coke trended globally. Coca-Cola quickly issued denials, promising Mexican Coke would remain unchanged. But industry analysts remain skeptical. With sugar prices continuing to rise and corn syrup getting cheaper, how long can this promise hold? And here's a troubling revelation. Independent laboratory testing of Mexican Coke bottles in San Diego found inconsistent sugar compositions, suggesting some batches may already be using blended sweeteners rather than a pure cane sugar. Could the transition be happening quietly, bottle by bottle? For now, Mexican Coke's future hangs in balance, caught between global demand for authenticity and the relentless pressure of profit margins. So where does this leave us? Mexican Coca-Cola isn't just a beverage, it's a complex web of contradictions. A product celebrated for its purity while simultaneously driving a public health disaster. A symbol of tradition that's fueling a thoroughly modern black market. A drink that represents cultural resistance while also epitomizing corporate globalization. The next time you hold that glass bottle in your hand, feeling its satisfying weight and admiring its vintage curves, remember the full story behind it. Remember that while you enjoy an occasional treat, some children in Chiapas will drink more Coke today than water. Remember that the same sugar giving you momentary pleasure is causing lifetime suffering for millions. Does this mean you should never enjoy Mexican Coke again? That's not for me to say, but perhaps we should all drink it with open eyes, aware of both its pleasure and its cost, because every product tells a story, if we're willing to listen. And Mexican Coca-Cola's story is more complex, more troubling, and more fascinating than most of us ever imagined. So I ask you one final question. Now that you know the truth, will your next sip taste the same?